Welcome to Perkins eLearning webinar series. My name is Jay Morris, welcoming you to today's presentation, Accessible Books and Literacy, Supporting and Encouraging a Love for Literacy. Perkins eLearning webinars are presented throughout the year. You may register to attend live webinars at no fee or view recorded webinars like this one at a time and place that suits your schedule. The webinar series is just one of the offerings in our professional development program, which includes publications, e-newsletters, webcast, online and in-person classes, and self-paced study. You can see all of our listings at perkinselearning.org. Today's presentation is by Sandra Kenrick. Before we get started, I'd like to review a couple of things about the technology. We're using a virtual meeting room for audio. Make sure your volume is on and turned up. External speakers or personal headphones provide the best quality audio. The event is being made available in January of 2016 on the Perkins website, including a PDF version of the slide presentation you're going to see today. Thank you for joining us for this event. As always, we appreciate your feedback and your topic suggestions. And now it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Sandra Kenrick. She's the mother of two boys. Her oldest, Liam, age 6, is deafblind. His first language is American Sign Language. Her youngest, age 3, has typical vision and hearing. His first language is English. Theirs is truly a bilingual household where both ASL and English are used. Sandy is taught at the elementary and high school and general education classrooms. She's also a regular blogger for the Perkins Paths to Literacy website, which helps support a love for literacy for children who are blind or visually impaired. She has also been part of creating a module for Open Hands, Open Access, deaf-blind intervener learning modules. She loves learning everything she can about all things deaf-blind, blind, and deaf to help support and advocate for her son. Welcome, Sandy.
Hi, I am really excited to be here today to do this presentation on accessible books and literacy, supporting and encouraging a love for literacy. I'm Sandra Kenrick. I want to introduce my two boys to you. I'm a mom of a 3-year-old who has typical vision and hearing, and then I am also a mother to a 6-year-old boy named Liam, who is deafblind. This is Liam. He is a very happy 6-year-old little boy. He was born with typical vision and hearing. When he was 2.5, he became sick with meningitis. And after months in the hospital and in the rehab hospitals, we brought home a little boy who was deafblind. His vision, he has CVI, cortical visual impairment, and he can see movement, light and dark. He can see some shapes in the room, like if I were standing or sitting, he would be able to find me and usually decide if I'm sitting or standing. He does not use his vision to see sign language, so he uses tactile sign language. He does not use it cannot use it for reading, so he is a Braille reader. His vision is in the upper field, and he, like I said before being deafblind, he is completely deaf. We had tried 2 cochlear implant surgeries, and both did not work. They were failed attempts. So. How did I get started creating accessible books? Before he became sick, and reading books was one of his very favorite things to do. He'd read by himself. He'd love if we read to him. It was his very favorite thing to do. So when we brought him home from the hospital, he found his box of books on the floor, and he grabbed them, felt them, threw them on the floor. His books that he had once loved, he was very mad at when he came home because he could no longer see them and enjoy them. So I was determined from that point on to make it somehow where he could still enjoy literacy, still enjoy reading books. I was very determined. So I started that day researching, trying to find any type of materials or research or something on where to start, how to make books for my my child who is now blind. I didn't find very much. So that is kind of how I started. I just started creating books that he could feel. I was obviously not anything near not an expert at all. And so it was very overwhelming at first, but I just started somewhere. The picture you see with the star on it was my very first book I made. It was a shape book. I didn't even have a Braille-er at the time. I didn't even know anything about Braille at the time, but I wanted to start giving him access to Braille right away, so I made a shape book for him, and every page was a tactile shape. For example, the one you see there is just a cookie cutter in the shape of a star. I had on another page a heart that had a whole bunch of bumps on it. So I had all these different shapes with fun different things to feel, and he loved those books. The other one that you see on the page is just a fun counting book that had pages, things you could move on it. And it was a counting book, so I just put objects with flaps you can lift up and things he could count, and he really enjoyed that. So those were my first couple of books I first made, and it also kind of how I got started sharing my ideas with Tactile literacy was I had asked my deaf outreach consultant, I have these books I'm starting to make. I would love to share them with other parents or educators who are kind of in the same boat as me, don't know where to start. All of a sudden they have this kiddo that they want to make materials for and they don't even know where to start. I want to share my ideas. So she connected me with Tactile literacy, and that is how I began that journey. So there was a need for accessibility, another thing that really drove my the need for me to create accessible materials for my son. You'll see a picture of Pete the cat. My son is in a mainstream classroom. He has been from 2 years of preschool all the way through now, first grade. Last year, especially, the classroom loved Pete the cat books. I would like to try to make that book in a way that was accessible to him, so in a story box is kind of how I did that one. But so just regular children's books is a need for accessibility, that books that his peers will be looking at and reading. There's math worksheets. Those needed to be adapted and modified for him in a way that'd be accessible. There's little classroom readers. His whole world at school was made for kids that can see, so that would be a huge need for accessibility that we have. So in this presentation today, we're going to be going over a few different approaches that I have done to make literacy accessible for my son. We'll be talking about experience books, conversation boxes, story boxes, story bags, tactile books, adapting classroom readers, and adapting science books and nonfiction readers. And then there'll just be some other things that are fun I'll be sharing. The first one I want to talk about, and we'll spend some more time on this today, is an experience book. The way we have used experience books is creating a book about something he experienced. Okay, so in the picture here you'll see a gymnastics book. We created a book about his weekly trips to the gymnastics place. And so the front cover has this foamy thing that kind of feels like the mats he walks on. There was a wooden board that represented the wooden board he walked, the little balance beam. There was some foam pieces in there that represented the foam block pit that he would get to jump into and play in. This was such a great tool for him. Our learning objective for this experience book was a communication goal. At the time, he was little. I think in preschool at this time, and we were just working on expanding his vocabulary, his communication skills, and being able to share his experiences with other people. So he was able to share this experience book, bring it to school, share it with Grandma. Here he's sharing it with me. We're just talking and reliving our experience. So it gave him a chance to, with limited vocabulary that he had at the time, this experience book gave him a chance to be able to share something that was fun and important to him. So how would you create an experience book? There's a lot of different ways you can approach this. I'm just going to share the ways that I have done it. It's really great if you can use actual mementos from the experience, so you need to plan ahead. I usually bring this bag, this satchel bag I can put across my chest, then I have my hands free to help, where you can collect items from the experience to put in your bag, and then when you get home you can make the book with your child. And they can help put things in the bag. Like my son knows when I take out this bag and bring it to where we're going, we're creating a book. You need to think ahead of time on what activities and steps do you want to actually highlight in the book, What do you think would be the most memorable, meaningful? Take notes of these things to remember so you know things to collect while you're there. If the child is not present to the bake, you can, or present when you want to make the book, you can make it ahead of time. I usually will have the book made mostly ahead of time, but then have a few things that my son can add. And I think as he grows, we can just have him make more and more and more of it, because I think that would be really motivating and meaningful if your child was able to make the book with you. I have an example of our most recent experience book that we made, and this one is about a trip we took. It was an actual School for the Deaf event, so all these kiddos from around our little area who are deaf came to this event, and it was bowling, and Liam loves bowling. So I wanted to create a bowling book for him. Since this is a more recent book, our objective changed from a communication goal, which is still great for him to be able to share his story, but also I wanted it to be sneak in his new contractions he was learning at school, like light, can, go, I put those inside the book, so it would be a good, meaningful way for him to use his new words in a way that was motivating for him. He was very excited that he had his words in his book. So options for modifying objectives. You could use focused vocabulary, so like I did contractions if you're working on adjectives or whatever that could be in your experience book, but it'd be in a way that's motivating for him and meaningful. You could have communication goals like I did for his gymnastics book. If you're working on sequencing a story or organizing your story, you know, you could have your book put together, and then you could take it apart and put it to organize it in a graphic organizer. You could use experience books for writing, retelling stories, events, all different kind of things that can be used for an experience book. I'm kind of going to show you step by step of how I made this book. So we went bowling, and here I kind of knew what was going to happen ahead of time. But here are some of the things that Liam experienced during this event. We had pizza and drank pop. He got to wear bowling shoes, so he got to tell the man that he wanted shoes, please. He was able to carry his bowling ball to the ramp, and he got to push it down the ramp. And then he got to feel a big pen. The guys at the counter gave us a big pen so he could feel the pins, what he was hitting. And then we also brought some little toy bowling pins and a little toy ball, so you'll see that. I'm going to be showing a video of all of these so you get to see his experience. And then he got to visit with his friends, some of his favorite people. So we're going to watch a video and be watching for these 5 things that he got to experience. Okay, so in this clip you'll see Liam. He's talking to my friend Hannah at bowling. He just asked for the pop, a drink of pop. And it's very cold, he said. And he's eating pizza by himself. And he said, it's a big pizza. It's a different pizza. He hasn't had this kind in a while. There he's just asking, you know, is there any fruit here? He called it a new pizza. He's definitely enjoying it. Here's a video clip of him. That's my friend Hannah, I think, again, helping him put his shoes on. He gets to Velcro them by himself. He really loved these shoes. We had a hard time getting him to take them off when it was time to leave. He liked them. So here he's ready to go bowling. Ready to stand up with his new shoes on. Here he is feeling the ball ramp with Mom, pushing the ball down the ramp. And then I would narrate for him. It's rolling, it's rolling. Oh, you hit the pin. Yay! Pushing the ball again. Okay, here he is. The guys at the counter gave us this big pin. So here he is feeling the big pin and getting to compare it with the smaller little toy pins that we had brought that are in the tin that he's holding on his lap. So we got to feel the big pin, the small pin, the ball hits the pin. We got to use all of those vocabulary words with him. And he's enjoying just talking with his friends there at the bowling alley. Okay, so now that you've seen his experience, it was really a busy, but a great time. He thoroughly enjoyed it. We created the bowling book. I pre-planned this book ahead of time. I glued his little toy bowling pins on the cover. I put the little bowling shoe on there. I cut a piece of paper plate and saved the lid to his pop that he was drinking. I put that on there so we could talk about drinking his pop. I did let him help, put the Braille labels on. If you want to even modify that more, you could have had him write it himself and put them on, of which I let him do who was there. He got to put all of the names of the people that were there. His friend, like Hannah was there, Lauren was there, Toby was there, Mom was there, Liam was there. He got to stick all of those on, so he really enjoyed that. A way to get him involved in the process, to take ownership of his book. So we're going to just show another quick video just so you get the whole experience of him getting to explore his new bowling book. He loves new books. So this is the first time he got to look at his new book with me. There he's finding the Braille. He said, more bowling pin. Okay, so he went through the book. When he gets new books, he loves to quickly just feel everything, go through the whole thing. So I always just let him just explore. I'll answer his questions. I'll add when I need to. And then he'll go back, probably do the same thing again. Then he'll go back again, and then we really get to really focus and pay attention to the words, enjoy the story, have conversations about the book, about things that happened. It's really just a great time. I enjoy it. He enjoys it. We'll show one more slide here. He doesn't just get to share with me, and we get to reminisce about our experience, but he also got to come. Grandma came over, and he got to share his video with Grandma. He got to bring it to school, but I thought you might just enjoy. Here's just a quick little video of him sharing with his grandma about his bowling book and his experience. So he's talking about the bowling pin falling down. He's trying to find the Braille, showing her the Braille. She's asking, who was bowling? He said, bowling with me. And she's like, who else was there? Mom was bowling with me. So he is very excited. They went through the book a couple of times, but he was very excited and motivated and proud. Like, I don't know if you could tell, but he had this very serious face when he's showing Grandma. Like, he's so proud to show her his book, that he can read it, that he can tell it's his event. It was great. It's one of his favorites to bring back and forth to school. I have to keep reminding him, like, can you bring the bowling book home? Because he's always asking for it here. He brings it to school. So experience books can be very powerful, very motivating, a great way to support and encourage a love for literacy. The next thing that we can talk about is conversation boxes. A conversation box, at least in this case how we've used it, is a box that has items in it from a shared experience that a learner can use to have a conversation with someone about the items. It can also be a book, like, say, if you're learning about outside items or something. It could be a whole bunch of outside items that you can take out and have a conversation about. But we used it more as like an experience. This is a picture of Liam and his interpreter and / intervener from school. I believe he's in preschool in this picture. Our goal was, to increase vocabulary, again, communication skills. Again, these can be used for all different kind of children at different levels. It can be modified to fit all children, I believe. But it's fun, it's motivating. This is an experience they had. She came over to our house, we made toast. Inside the box, I tried to have as many real items as we could, like a jelly jar when he got to put the jelly on his toast, a knife, found a pretend toaster. We got to compare that to the real toaster. We had a plate, a washcloth because it was messy. And then I don't know if you can see, but there's Braille labels. So we were able to let him label, Braille, 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 exposure to Braille. He got to label all of the pieces in his conversation box. So they can be a great tool, for whatever purpose you have. Again, ours was for communication goals. Another example of a recent conversation box we did, so now as he's older, this is first grade, but still applicable for him and meaningful. We live near a petting farm. We go there a lot, but this time we got to go in the fall versus the summer, and they had a very fun fall festival. So the kids got to pick out their pumpkin. They got to play in this really cool corn pit. It had like hay bales, and then inside it was corn kernels, and it was like this deep. That was their favorite thing to do. We played a lot in there, and so I made sure I had my satchel again. I put pieces of corn in there, hay, to remind us of that event. We can go back and talk about it. Eventually, maybe we could take those and make a book out of it. There's a little candy wrapper in there. I saved that because the lady, when we were walking out, gave him some candy. There's a little ticket in there. We had to go to give tickets to go on different things, and he loved the idea of being able to give tickets to people. It's kind of hard to see, but in the little square there's a pumpkin stem. Well, Liam, if you're not careful, loves to rip off pumpkin stems. So his pumpkin that he got doesn't have a stem on it, but it made a great piece to our storybox collection. Story boxes. Okay, these I really love. Again, this one I think of him in preschool. The picture of him is one of my first story boxes I made, and basically what it is I've done it two different ways. You can have a story. It could be in a book form or just a story that you know that you can tell, but then you gather objects that go with the story and you put them in the box. The one that he's holding, and obviously he's a big smile, this is one of his first time. This is the face I get when he gets new books. He's so excited. This is one I made about a story adaptation for Goldilocks and the Three Bears. I made it 2 bears. I actually made the book, so the book has tactile graphics, and then there's also objects with it. The picture you'll see with the owls, that's a recent one I did at a different social event we went to. The kids I knew ahead of time were going to be reading the story Owl Babies. I wanted Liam to be able to participate in this with the other kids, so I found a mama owl and 3 baby owls and then a tree branch to go with the story. So while the other kids were being read to about owl babies, Liam was getting the story signed to him and also getting to feel the objects from the story. So it was a way to include him, again to support that love for literacy. Story boxes can be really fancy and a lot of work put into them, like my my Goldilocks story, or like this owl story. I found a few owls, a stick, put it together, and it still was fun. So I mean, it can be a whole range, and for all different learners. Again, we have a preschooler story all the way, he's in first grade now. I can see how it could work for older kids as well. They're just a great tool. Another thing I really like, we do a lot of, is just tactile books in general. Okay, so Liam's sighted peers, get these books that have these beautiful pictures in them. They use them for enjoyment. They use them as tools to help them with their reading. I just think that I, of course, wanted the same thing for Liam. So all of his books, have tactile graphics, but I also, if you see the book that has a sled, it's like the red cover that I used for a sled. I wanted his tactile pictures to be just as fun for him to feel, as his peers are for their pictures that they're looking at. So the sled book I made, like I made fake snow, like he could feel throughout the book, had different snow, he had sled, it had characters in there, you know, all different kind of fun things to feel. And the sled book was a story just about a little boy that went sledding, pulled his bear on the sled. I just made that one up. You can do this, I will show you later on, but you can add tactile graphics to books that are already made. The cool thing about making your own is you can make sure you choose a book that's motivating. For your son, we had just got done pulling a sled to Grandma's house the day before he got this book. So I'm like, I want to make a sledding book. It's something he knows about, he likes it, and then I could transfer it to this little boy character. We have an actual boy that could pull the sled, put his bear in it. It was kind of a fun interactive book. Concept books, if you see the one small and big, you can use books to teach concepts such as small and big, soft and hard. Possibilities are endless there. That's just one I made, like a small circle, small star, big star. And that book is kind of funny because we made that. It was one of my first books, so it's probably, like 3-4 years old. So it's had a lot of use, and some of the pieces have fallen off. But then I can just take them off. I add new ones too. So he even uses this book now just for a fun book. But I add different objects onto it. So it's been kind of, we still have that book floating around here. So, and again, at the time, back then, I mean, he's reading Braille now, but at the time then, he wasn't. But it's so important to just add that Braille, exposure. So, I mean, he can just realize that Braille's there. It means something. It's important to his world. I'm going to quick show you just a little video clip. This is I'm reading a book with Liam. It's a tactile book, and this one is just a number book. I think is the one I'm showing you. And it's just the number 2 book, so there's a whole bunch of items that are number 2. So here's just a way, read with your kid, your child, your student, make it fun, have conversations. Two crosses. And Liam loves to have a lot of side conversations when he's reading, but I think that's great. And there he's counting. We're teaching him to feel the things you're counting. And I said, you count. And there he's counting 1, 2. 1, 2. So he gets to find the pictures, he gets to find the Braille, feel the Braille. If he doesn't, I just gently remind him, hand in your hand, push his hands towards the Braille to feel him. But he's doing pretty good. This one I think was last year, so he was in kindergarten in this picture. So he said, it's a circle, and I said, yep, that's a circle. 1, 2. 2 circles I signed. And he said, Mommy, fix it, because it was broken before, but I had fixed it. So he notices every time if something has ripped off and I fix it, he'll notice, or he'll tell me to fix it. That was I made like a little mini abacus. It just had 2 rings that he could slide over, just for something fun, something different. And now he's saying that he wants Mommy to go get, he wants me to go get more books or something. Okay. We'll move on to adapting classroom readers. This was another big one I told you before about needing accessibility for classroom materials. It was very important, especially in a mainstream setting. I want my child to be included, and this means making sure that materials are not only just brailled. I want them, like I said, to have graphics that are motivating and fun and interesting and help support the learning that he's doing. I don't want him just, at this point, being a little guy, just having just the straight Braille. I wanted him to have the graphics with it. So there's a picture of a classroom reader that they're just these little paper things he would get, and these little paper booklets, and I would get stacks of them home. So what I did is I would cut the pictures out, and I would glue the story pages onto harder chipboard books like you see in the picture there. I wanted the actual pictures to be in the books so that when he reads them at school, his peers could read them with him or see that, hey, Liam's reading the same books we are. A great thing for inclusion. But then I would add the Braille, and then I would add real life pictures. So this is a bedtime story. So there's a picture of a toothbrush. I put a real toothbrush in. There's a picture of pajamas. I cut out a piece of his pajamas and put them in the book so he could feel that. There was a picture of a light. So I put a little light switch. Found one real cheap at Walmart. Just glued a light switch in there. So he had real pictures to go with the words, go with the story. A little added bonus in a mainstream setting, his little kindergarten friends at the time, these books are really fun for them to read too as well with Liam, so it's really fun for all the kids. The picture of the rainforest animals, they were just happening to read. I usually, obviously, I think it's important to pick books that are motivating for kids, things that they've had experiences with, etc. In this case, though, one of us, he does belong in a little guided reading group, and they were reading a book on the rainforest. So instead of just brailing the book, because they have the book braille at school, I made a story bag to go with his little homework guided reading book thing, and I made sure that there was objects to go with every page. So with the parrot, I put a feather. With the butterfly, I found a butterfly. Frog, I found a frog. And then I also made this little box that had a ton of fake vegetation so that as he read each one, he could put the animals into the rainforest. What a way to support and encourage just loving literacy, making it fun and motivating. He loved that book. And so I made sure I wanted all his guided reading books to be adapted. It might take a little more time, but the end goal is totally worth it. Here's just a couple other examples. The Hungry Caterpillar. I totally changed that into another book. I made you'll see the little cardboard caterpillar with fun things to feel. So that caterpillar can actually go and eat all of the, I don't know if you're aware of the book, but the Hungry Caterpillar, day 1, he eats an apple. Day 2, he eats 2 grapes, or I don't know. But the little caterpillar actually can eat all the things on this page, and very fun things to feel versus just having the flat braille, which I'll show you later that he has a book without the pictures. But I think it's so important that he has that opportunity to enjoy pictures like his peers do. Another one here this was a fun one. It was about, I think it was Australian animals. And so this one, okay, so obviously real objects are best, but sometimes it's good to get them used to, here's I just cut out a shape of a kangaroo that had this little baby kangaroo you could take in and out. He loved that, out of the pouch. But they were Velcroed, so every time he read that, he could put them onto a page. So it's just something fun to do. A little koala bear, you could take them off and put them on this separate page over here. So that's just another way that you can modify, add a little variety to the books that they're reading at school in a way that one, doesn't cost a thing. So adapting science books and nonfiction readers. So I read, okay, so he's in 1st grade. So last summer, before 1st grade started, I made sure to look at the science goals ahead of time because I wanted to see, nonfiction has to be coming up. What are the standards for 1st grade for science? What kind of stuff are his peers going to be having? I want to be ready ahead of time for him. So 1st grade, there's a lot of life cycle of animals. And so I was like, okay, let's get going here. Let's make these books. So I made a bird book. I wanted to try to pick ones that were actually possible for him to have felt before, to experience, and then read the book about them. So birds, you know, at the farm, he's had experience with birds before. So then I made a bird book. So I tried to make in the book, like, you know, the life cycle, what do they eat, you know, here they are as little babies in the nest. There's another page that had they eat worms and seeds. So I had real seeds and then real life-like feeling worms I found in the fishing tackle. They're kind of gross, but they work. Those kind of things. And the frog, the life cycle of a frog, there was some great little toy models that were, I thought, since you don't have the real thing, they felt pretty detailed. So it had like the eggs, it had the tadpole, it had the young frog, it had the adult frog. There was one for turtle because we live near a reptile place. So he was able to, he's felt turtles before. We found a frog in our yard this summer. So these are all books that he experienced, but now he can learn more with them. And so now at school, all of the kids are learning about nonfiction. They're focusing on their reading. They're focusing on their writing time. Well, now Liam has a way to be included in a way that's fun and motivating, and just practically has his books for what they're doing in school right now. So that's a way that you can do that. Another quick way that you can do nonfiction books, this is my next project to do. I have a friend from back home that is a taxidermist too. So I asked him if he happened to have any just random like pelts of like a bear. I wanted to make a bear book. We have a lot of animal places in our town, but we live next to a bear place, and so I wanted this spring, when the cubs are really little, I want Liam to go there and be able to touch the cubs, and we can make a bear book. But the taxidermy could give me pieces of just little felt that he had left over. Well, he did better than that. I mean, he sent me the bear, he sent me deer, and just models of like all different like ducks and beavers. So imagine the stories I can make with that, with actual real things that you can touch. I think is going to be, I'm really excited to make those. So that's just another place you could try to contact. I bet people would be happy to donate those if you're making a book for a child. So here's that book I was telling you before about not having pictures. Another idea you could make is just to include your child, to make literacy accessible to them, is I made a Braille word dictionary, and the idea that inspired this was in classrooms, I don't know if you've seen, they have, in general education classrooms, they have things called a word wall, and it's where they have the alphabet on the wall, and then you put the words you know under each letter. Well, that's not very accessible to a child like Liam, where for one, he can't even touch way up there, even if you brailled everything. So I wanted to make a word book for him that he could just carry with, that has his words that he's learning, that he likes, that he needs to remember, and to put them in this word book. And I have to tell you, this book is one of his very favorite things to read. And this book also goes back and forth between school and home. It has every letter of the alphabet. I put the big Braille and the little Braille, just for fun. He likes to feel both. And then he gets to add words that he learns on there, and they're words that are motivating. So here there's only a few words on the page, but if you were to see the book today, the book is plastered with words, and he enjoys finding everyone and reading them. This book can be used in different ways. It can be used just as that, putting words on the page he needs to learn, and he just likes to remember. It can be used as an activity like, oh, find the word mom, find the word Liam. It can be used as a dictionary to check your words, to check how to spell something, a whole bunch of different things that it can be used for. And I don't see why you couldn't add graphics to it as well. We just didn't have room if we were going to add all those words. Okay, so another way that you can make literacy accessible, but in a way that supports IEP goals and even standards, like I did the nonfiction, that can support standards that you have, but supporting IEP goals is an important thing. So in the spring when we did Liam's IEP goals for the next school year, I wanted to take those goals and make sure he had books to support the goals as well. So I just took the standards, and let me just give you an example. from one of his IEP goals, was to have more describing words, to be able to describe things, adjectives, that kind of a thing. Also to be able to categorize things, what goes together. Those were 2 different goals. So I got some ideas going for different books that could support that. There's a picture of him opening up a car door. That at the time was our new car. He was very excited about it, so there's your motivating factor. Super excited that we got a new car. So I thought, we could make a book to support IEP goals about his new car. So the car has 4 smooth, new hard doors. So there's hard, smooth, there's 4 of them. As many describing things as you can get. You could talk about, the tires. He loves touching tires. But tires, there's 4 tires. They're dirty. They're rubber. They are bumpy. So all of those kind of things you could do. Just talking about his new car. You could talk about the seats. You could talk about the windows. Another one is him in the fridge. This picture is great because he's smiling, so goofy, because I needed a picture to show about the fridge book that I was making, to show you all about the picture. And so I said, hey Liam, open the fridge and touch the milk and smile for me. And that's what we got. But the point of this picture was what things belong in a fridge. So you could make a milk belongs in a fridge, pop belongs in the fridge, fruit belongs, well, if we put our apples in the fridge, fruit belongs in the fridge, our water jug, whatever you could go. But those are all things that belong in a fridge. So that word belong, what goes in a fridge, that can be taught through this book. In a way, he loves the fridge. He's not really supposed to be in there, so it's kind of fun novelty for him. So that book would be great for teaching that. We also made a book about what belongs in a living room. So there's I have a great friend that enlisted help. I said, I want this book about what belongs in a living room. I gave her the words, but then she made like a window, the curtains. She made these cute little curtains on a window. A couch belongs in a living room. She made sewed these little couch cushions. She's great. So, you can enlist the help of friends that are skilled in other ways that maybe I know I'm not in that part. So that brings me to enlisting help. Where do you get books? I'm not going to lie, it takes a lot of time to personalize and modify and make books and literacy accessible to a child with vision impairments. But I'm saying it's possible, it's worth it, it can be done, and if you were just to see the smile on my Liam's face when he gets new books, it makes it all worth it, and just the way he's improving and just growing his skills, his reading skills, how much he loves Braille, it makes it all worth it. Braille is just going to open up the world for him, literacy is. So, where do we get these books? Okay, I have done, every year before school starts, I host a bookmaking party. Takes a little bit of planning, but this is what I do. You invite as many friends as you can to come to this party. You buy all the supplies. You plan ahead of time. I would always plan exactly, like, okay, let's just use this year, for example. I had these goals, like the living room book. I had standards I wanted to do. I had this and this and this. I wanted his new contractions in the book, yada, yada, yada. So I have about the idea for 20 books. I get the ideas written down. And this year, it got a little more fancy. I gave them ahead of time so they could plan and they could gather all the materials for their book. I gave them the books I wanted them to make. And then they would bring them to the party, and we'd put these books together. My son's CBI was great, and he would help Braille things. I would help Braille things. And we got all these books Brailled and put together, and they were perfect for him to have. The bookmaking parties I usually do for books, so he has browsing books at school. He has books like those nonfictions, he has books for when the other kids are doing projects, he's able to do them. They're basically for school, for library books, for browsing books, for reading time books. So he has them at school, and a bunch of them. Another way to get friends and families involved. So the picture on the table with all the books, that was from one bookmaking party, but the other one was the stars. Another way I've gotten friends and family involved is every year for birthdays. When we have birthday parties, I make these book pages. This one is an example of a shape book we made, and so I gave this one. This one was to my friend Angie, so I would give her this blank page, this chipboard page, and I would already have it brailled, and her job was to do a star. I said, here you go, and this is the present for Liam. I go, put any, and her kids got to help, put any amount of stars you want, just as long as they're fun to feel, and then also fun visually, so his little brother can look at it too and enjoy it. And this is what they came up with. So some people had a heart, some people had squares, rectangles, and they just made this beautiful book. So what they would do is they'd wrap them up, bring them to the party. Liam would open them and get to put them in his binder every time he opened, and he just loved it. Those are one of his favorite things to go back and read. And he can tell you who made what page to this day. Last year he turned 6, so I just had everybody, I had put their names in Braille on it, and I just put six fun items on there just for fun. Any 6 items you want that are fun to visually and fun to touch. So that was a fun one too. So just a little tip on different ideas that you would want to use for, at least what I've used for books, is you want to make sure, especially depending on your child, Liam is getting a little more gentle now, so we can kind of not make him quite as tough and sturdy and indestructible, but you want to make sure you have sturdy pages. So I use chipboard pages or books, and they're kind of hard to find anymore at hobby stores, but some of them have them. But also I just look on Amazon a lot, and you can even just get the pages and put the rings on them. You can find some great books. I, again, like to have good variety in the book pages as well. I don't want it just to be boring and the same old thing. Let's support this love for literacy. Let's make it fun. I try to just vary it between, sometimes I use file folders with little spiral binders. Sometimes I use rings. Sometimes I buy fancy big board books. And you also can reuse, I've seen reuse children's board books. You have them at home. As long as your tactile graphics you glue on are thinner, you can reuse children's board books as well. You can cover them, put stuff on it as is. That would be inexpensive. So making the environment accessible, that's a big part of literacy too, is just making sure the environment. Braille is important to you. Braille is everywhere in your life. That's what we need to teach our kids. So we label things in our home, in our school. Here's some pictures of things we label at home. All my light switches say on and off. The hooks say Liam or his brother or my name on there. Anywhere in the house that you see print that he will be able to touch, I also put Braille. The dishwasher has Braille. The microwave has Braille. The refrigerator has Braille. The stove doesn't yet because he can't touch the top and the knobs. I couldn't get it to go on there, but anywhere that we can possibly put Braille that makes sense, anywhere that his little brother is seeing print, I want Liam to be feeling Braille as well. All children need a literacy-rich environment in a format that is accessible to them. And again, if your student has low vision, you can have print. You can use the large print or tactile symbols with it too, just to make it to inclusive, whatever your child needs. I just want to take a little bit of time for specific ideas for kids who are deafblind. The previous things I talked about can totally be added to kids with different abilities, whether you have low vision, whether you're just a straight Braille reader. But these ones are more specific towards deafblind. But again, I think everybody can take a little bit from it. So I have 2 things. There's storytelling. Storytelling is great for all children, but this one I'm going to be showing you later this is how I storytelling with my son. I'll skip to the homework table because then I'll go back to storytelling. But the homework table, I was frustrated when we'd get homework from school, and it was great homework. We like doing it. Liam loves homework. I hope that continues because it's one of his favorite things to do. But I was frustrated because we used to sit at the table, and the only spot we had, it wasn't great form. With tactile signing, you're supposed to be at his level, at the person's level you're signing with. You don't want to have to reach too far or pull them in towards you. It needs to be comfortable distance so that you can sign accurately and clearly with them and comfortably. But then also throw in having to read, Braille on top of that. So Braille signing, I was having a hard time finding a place to do homework with him, so I got this homework table, this idea, and space is limited in my house. But I got this table, so it's a thinner table, so it sits against the wall, but when we do homework we can pull it out. I put my little stool thing behind there, and William loves to set it up. He'll put his stool back there for me. Anyway, but it fits his books, his homework just perfectly on the table. I can sign with him and help him, just like in this picture. Just another tool. I think it would be helpful if you have a student that uses tactile signing, or a child, to have that at home or at school, even a thinner table that you can have the good form with, so your signs are clear. You're able to still make sure they're, I call them reading hands. I don't know if that's technical, but their reading hands have good form. It's just been really helpful to us, so I thought I'd share that. Back to the storytelling, I have a little video. Storytelling is so important. Even you can do just the concept of just story, enjoying stories, conversation. You'll see in this video, I will try to interpret a little bit what the video is saying, but he has so many questions. After doing the storytelling, I realized that he didn't have a lot of concept. Like, we had some missing ideas about time. So there's just so many great things that can come out of storytelling. There's enjoyment. You can use it as an assessment for what your kids still need to learn, because that's what I ended up having to do. And it just can be just a great tool to build on his literacy skills as well. So we'll show this video. I'm telling a story about two dogs. And the two dogs, there was a big one that went walking, and then there's this little dog, and he's cute. And so the two dogs, they wanted to go outside and go for a walk. The big dog saw this water, this puddle, and he wanted to drink, so he drank the water. Then this little dog, he saw the puddle, and he starts splashing, 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 splashing. See his smile? Splash, 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 splash. So then he told me, Mom needs to wash the dog. So I said, yeah, we'll wash him. So then I tried to continue with my story that we're going to wash the dog, but he's still on it. So he said, Mom needs to bring the dog into the house and then into the bathtub. And I said, yes, you're funny. Yes, we'll wash it. So good conversation. Here's the next story, my attempt at trying to tell a Bible story. So long time ago, I'm telling a story about Noah's Ark, how the people were sinning, but there was a special man, a special family over there, and then there was a man, and his name was Noah. Well, it's kind of funny because now he's starting to talk. He thinks the man is here that I'm talking about, and that the man's gonna come to his house and say hi to him. So that gave me some clues that we need to work on storytelling and things that happened way in the past. So I was like, no, he's from long ago. God told him to build a boat. And now he's talking about the guy coming to his house. So it's just kind of fun, though. We had some good conversation, teaching him, trying to tell, I didn't give up. He's getting better with stories and the idea of concepts, but it just gives a good idea of where he's at, ideas to talk to about his team, like, okay, how can we get him to understand this? Where do we need to go next? And just fun. He enjoys it. I laugh. He laughs. It's a good way to support a love for literacy as well.
Welcome to the Q&A segment of our presentation. We have a few questions that were submitted that I'd like to have Sandy respond to. First one comes from Sarah. Sarah is a teacher consultant for the visually impaired in Michigan, and her question is this. I I have a 7-year-old student who has TBI, is totally blind, cerebral palsy. Although he is ambulatory, can walk, and has good use of his arms, he does not have the fine motor skills to read Braille, but he uses a tactile schedule. We have him writing by dictating into the APH Wilson recorder. His reading is using a switch to listen to pages of a book in Classroom Suite. Could you suggest other literary ideas for him?
Okay, I really like this, I guess request for other literacy ideas for him. Absolutely. I just was kind of thinking maybe Storybox, like I was talked about before, might be great for him. And I was thinking, and again, you want to make sure that it's things that are motivating for him too, but I was thinking if you had the story boxes, so it could be a story that you had already, and then it had like the story objects, so that would be the pictures to go with it. I thought that could be really good to use for possibly, writing his own stories. He could use some of these objects, like if you were to use an experience box as well, he could use some of these objects to write his story with the objects, put them in organizers. That hopefully would be easier for him, his hands, to be able to, move those. And if you had bigger, boxes to organize his ideas and tell his own story that way, too, as well. I thought maybe using books that have larger tactile graphics that he could feel, or even if it was just textures for the pictures in his books as well. So then you wouldn't need the fine motor skills that you talked about. Like with an experience book as well, you could get real objects, real things that happen from his experience, and he could put those for his story in his books in a way where he could really still, books would be accessible to him that way, even if you needed to use sturdy pages, larger pages. That's kind of just the ideas that I had firsthand. So I hope that helps.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so the next question we have is from Kathleen. Kathleen is a 4th grade core classroom teacher, gifted technology in elementary education. Her question is, when you have a very diverse group of learners, what's the best way to adapt to each individual learning level when you are limited on resources? Probably not an uncommon question that you hear.
That is a great question. So some of my first thoughts is, I know for one, teachers in Liam's school they borrow Liam's books, and they are so they're actually used not just for him, even though they were made for him, they're used for other kids as well. But just some of my first thoughts were, yes, I really think that we need to get books in the hands of all children. And so think of what's motivating to your child, and what are the things you have on hand. A lot of these things I had at home. I borrowed from other people. If you have limited resources, if you know of a book that you want, sometimes you make a list, put it in the teacher's lounge or whatever you have. I email my friends, I put it on Facebook. I'm like, I need this, and this, and this, and this. Does anybody have this? They can get to me right away and donate. So all of the ideas that I made can be easily modified or tweaked. You can add more, you can add less. But again, I think it's important to enlist help. You can do the big bookmaking parties if you have all these. Take one night, crank a whole bunch of these books out. What do you need? What do you want? What books could be used for more than one student? Can you share? That was just kind of more what I was thinking, is to enlist the help of others, especially unlimited funds, because that's me. Books have potential to not be very cheap to make. But hopefully enlisting the help of others can make this doable for you.
The question we have comes from Dawn. She's the early childhood project leader at the American Printing House for the Blind. And really her question pertains to the use of pictures as a means of drawing a
a student into wanting to pick up a book. So she asked, what is it that makes a child want to pick up a book without an adult present to read it to them? For very young sighted children, it's the pictures that draw them to the book to start with. Printed or braille words simply can't do what pictures can to help a child recreate the story and retell it in his or her own words. So can you share just your own personal experience in terms of what you think draws a child to pick up a book without an adult present to read it to them for a child that is visually impaired?
Yes, yes, and yes. My beliefs, exactly. I had mentioned that earlier, but it's really near and dear to me that especially my son or any other kids that have visual impairments, it's important for them to have access to be able to have those pictures just as beautiful as they are for their sighted peers, that they can have them as well. And so it is so important that stories have beautiful tactile pictures too that are interesting. You got to be careful. There's a balance between too cluttered and not. But I like to have very interesting pieces. I'm thoughtful in the pieces I put on my page. I'm just thinking about, for example, like that sled book. I actually had snow for the background, very subtle, but you can feel the snow. It has a sled. It also had other pictures like were objects, like I had a little bag that wasn't shown where there's a little boy, there's a little soft teddy bear that could go in the sled as well. It is so important for kids that to have access to these pictures in a way that is accessible for modified for them. It's important, like you said, for them to understand the story, for the enjoyment, because I can tell you all of those hours and hours of making books for my Liam, that boy, his favorite thing to do is to have books. If I leave one of my book bags and if it's empty, he'll take it, go to his book closet, open the door, start throwing books in it, bring it to the couch and sit down and read it. We have book boxes all throughout the house. He will find them and bring the box to the couch, sit down and just read them and read them and read them and read them. He wants to bring them everywhere. But I think that's because it's important, to read with your child. It's important to make it fun, motivating. Just having these great pictures, yes, I agree, it's important. All of those things I mentioned, I'm a huge, 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 huge advocate for having beautiful, tactile graphics for our children.
The last question we have comes from Sabina, and Sabina works with the National Network for Equitable Library Services. They provide support to public libraries in all 8 Canadian provinces and territories. The question is, do you have any advice or ideas for what public librarians, especially those in rural communities, can do to supplement classroom activities and collections? Anything in particular you can think of as a must-have collection or service?
Very, very excited this question was asked. This is one of my new projects I've been working on, so yes, I have some ideas. When we go to the public library, it's just a fun place to go. They have fun stuff for the kids to do. But there's a few things that I think would just be great if every library could, to include our children who have low vision or who are blind. Currently, here's what I do. I have a book tote that has only books that they're library books. They're only books he's allowed to look at when we go to the library, because I want him to be included. I take my little 3-year-old to the library. I want Liam to be able to go and be able to have fun and be able to read books and look at books that are important to him. So yeah, I think it would be great if libraries had not just Braille books, but Braille books that have beautiful pictures that young readers can get their hands on, so they can feel the Braille, but also pictures. So here's my idea or my suggestion that I was going to try to get going in my town someday, is having a book-making party for the library. And so you can get ideas of making books for young readers, like 1 to 3 babies, for your elementary, for middle school, to get a few ideas. So at least there's some kind of books that these kids can check out and that they can be included and that they're fun, they're motivating, we're supporting a love for literacy for them. So having a bookmaking party, getting the funds for that, I think that would just be awesome for libraries to have. Another thing I was thinking that is a must-have for libraries, like I would love this for my child if our library had this, is to just have story boxes made, and that would be easy. You could have just a regular children's story, have that brailled, but then just have, maybe people can donate, like give a book to each person and say, hey, grab, if the story is about the 3 little bears, have 3 bears, have 3 chairs, have the 3 bowls for the porridge, have a blanket for the bed. There's your story box for 3 bears done. Like if you had those that families could check out, can you imagine how powerful and cool and that just would be so cool if we had story boxes. Another thing I was thinking would be nonfiction kits. That would be huge. That's easy to get a hold of, because I know is it? I don't know if it's a DNR or something like that. You can check those out. But if you could just do it, families could go to the library and check out nonfiction books, like say like a book about a deer. You'd have the book. You'd have some pelts. Maybe you'd have some foods, like that bird book. You know, you could have feathers. You could have birdseed. You could have an actual nest they could feel. All those things. So if you had nonfiction books that they could check out or even use while they're there, I think that'd be great. Oh goodness, I could just go on and on. Label the library in Braille. The bulletin boards or your artwork, have everything that you can touch. Have it be Braille included, or touchable things at different levels for your little ones, for your big kids. Have your boards accessible for all children. Our library has this fun little coloring corner. Why not have coloring pages that have raised lines for when you have kids who are blind come visit? You have that ready to go, textures that they can color over and they can do their scribbling. What if you even had Braille writers there for children to use when they come? These are all just things, if you can tell, that's another near and dear to me that I want to get going in our town as well. But thank you so much for that question.
I want to thank you, Sandy, for sharing your knowledge on this important topic. We certainly appreciate it. And thank you to all of our participants for joining us today. We hope that you found this webinar to be both informative and helpful, and we hope to have you join us for future webinars. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sandy.